Lil Pump, the man himself, and an artist who at this point has become synonymous with the rapper Fall Off and has had countless videos created about his life and career, mostly focusing on him as a metaphor for the grander SoundCloud wave, but I want to look at it from a different angle. I want to take a little bit of a deeper look into his career and life as opposed to the average, he made Gucci Gang and then he fell off. I want to look at his early rise in Florida, how he got to where he was, what factors were in play that really made him blow up, and of course, how he fell off. So that's what we're here to do when we look into the life and story of Lil Pump. Gezi Garcia was born August 17, 2000 in Helena, Florida. Both of his parents were Colombian and they divorced when he was 6 years old. Despite the separation though, the two stayed very close and Pump's mother was able to find a new husband who served as a second father figure to him. And against the common conception, apparently they actually had a pretty close relationship. Yes, there was that one story he told in the J. Cole interview about pulling a firearm out on him, but apparently that was an isolated incident and for the most part they got along, and Pump also got along with his actual birth father as well, giving him two father figures in his life. But that doesn't mean there wasn't any chaos or instability in his early life, because unfortunately his family was quite poor, and at one point they had to move in with another family and their son, a rapper known as Lil Ominous. Ominous was a little bit older than Pump, and because of that he kind of served as a big brother figure to him. He also had his cousin known as O Trapstar, but him and Pump were really never that close, and there's a common misconception once again that all three of these guys are cousins, but Ominous and O Trapstar are actually blood cousins, but Pump isn't related to them by blood. They were just so close growing up that they considered him one of their cousins slash little brother. Pump was a pretty rambunctious kid, always getting into fights with people his own age, and because of that he never really hung out with people in his class. He would often just hang out with Ominous and his friends, who of course were quite a bit older than him, and he really wanted to impress them. They would spend their days playing basketball, and at one point Pump actually really wanted to be a basketball player as well. He looked up to Ominous and his rap skills and kind of wanted to be a rapper, but at the same time wanted to take a different path. But after seeing Soulja Boy blow up in the way that he did, get all the fast cars, all the money and everything at such an early age, Pump was really inspired, and also through his love of Lil B, he really wanted to get into music as well. He started off just dropping freestyles for Ominous and his friends, and surprisingly they thought it was pretty good, so he kept doing it, getting encouraged to make more and more music, and eventually they would actually take him in as a full-on member of the friend group. At this point Ominous was already a pretty established rapper in Florida. He was going to studios, making connections, making his own beats, producing stuff for different people, and this is when he decided to bring Lil Pump along with him to record his first ever track. At the time Pump was going under the name Chief Gazzy, and they dropped the track together called Just Trapping, which was a collaboration between Ominous and Pump, and Ominous produced the entire track for him. Of course it never really went anywhere because Pump was still so young at the time and nobody really knew who he was, but after that he was full on invested in music. He started skipping class more and more, kept going to the studio almost every day with Ominous, and just overall basically dropped out of school even though he was still kind of in it technically. And it was at one of these studio sessions that Lil Pump would become acquainted with Omar Pinero, known professionally as Smoke Perp, his future partner in crime and collaborator. Now I don't want to get too much into Smoke Perp's career because that could probably be its own video, but unfortunately Pump and Perp are so intertwined that you have to kind of mention Perp's relevancy to Pump's story, because Perp already had clout before he ever started rapping. He was a Vine star, all of his vines would go viral within Florida, and basically everybody knew who he was because of that. And he would eventually switch over to making beats, but nobody wanted to rap over them because they weren't that good, so he started rapping over them himself, and it wasn't that hard to translate all that Vine fame into a rap persona and get clout off of that. Yeah, that's right, Jake Paul and Smoke Perp both started in the same place. It's kind of crazy to see how life can take you in different directions, but that's how it is. Perp wasn't rapping that long before he got in with Lil Ominous. They created a couple tracks together which got his buzz up even more, and then after that he was able to score a feature from XXXTentacion, which of course was already super big within the Florida scene, and after that he was able to blow up minorly. This track was known as Live Off a Lick, and funnily enough X would actually have a couple issues with Smoke Perp in the future. He said that he was always trying to steal his swag and trying to copy him, but at that point the song blew up on SoundCloud, and after that he was able to roll it into his second hit known as Ski Mask. This track would start to do numbers on SoundCloud, and because of that they would catch the attention of Lyrical Lemonade, which at the time wasn't that big of a deal. I mean, they already had some videos with Famous Dex, and they had Speed Racer with Warhol SS, which was their first real big breakout video, but Ski Mask was way bigger, and it's really their true blow up moment. So on top of getting Lyrical Lemonade put on the map, Lil Pump was also put on the map because he appeared within that video, and of course he was crazy looking, he was putting guns in his mouth, and everybody was thinking, who is this guy? Because at the time there wasn't a bunch of young rappers trying to get in the game. There was no Lil RT, no Lil Tecca, no Lil Mosey, so seeing a guy who was like 15 years old have a bunch of guns around him, smoking weed, doing drugs was really crazy to see, and a lot of people wanted to pay attention to that. And of course he had the dreads, he had the Gucci logo tattooed on his chest, so a lot of people were like, this kid is just dumb, ignorant, and I want to pay attention to him. And Pump was able to roll all of that attention into his first real song, Lil Pump. That's the name of the song. Yeah, he named one of his albums Lil Pump, he named himself Lil Pump, he named one of his songs Lil Pump. He's really obsessed with that name apparently. The name was actually Lil Pump Jet Ski at the start, but he would eventually cut the jet ski whiskey part off of it, and then after that the video would start to blow up. He dropped a second one called Elementary, and just because it was so ridiculous, the music was so weird sounding, and a lot of people thought it was a joke. Within Florida, a lot of people wanted to see him blow up just as kind of a meme. Like, let's see if we can blow this guy up just off complete antics and complete buffoonery, and if we can do that, we can blow anybody up. And Pump was also making moves within the Miami live show circuit because Lil Ominous was actually a promoter. He was able to get him a couple shows early on, which weren't that impressive, but eventually he got to perform alongside X, he got to perform alongside Members Only, he got to perform alongside Famous Dex. He was making big moves, and he was getting more and more popular by the day. At the time, live shows meant a whole lot more to the scene than they do now. A lot of people now just listen to music on TikTok, they don't go to live shows, and if they do, they don't really care about the people there. But at the time, people just wanted to go to warehouses and get turned up, listening to ignorant music, getting messed up on drugs, getting drunk, and Lil Pump definitely served that purpose really well. And if you've ever wondered why so many songs around this time had all these ad-libs where people go A or okay and all this stuff, it's because when they did live performances, not everybody in the audience would know every word to the song, but if you had a very noticeable ad-lib, they'd be able to say it back to you, and because of that, it would make the energy at these shows a lot more passionate. You know, you're not going to go to a show and sing every lyric of an Eminem song, but if you go to a show and Lil Pump is going, okay, okay, you can at least say that back to him, and because of that, it's more memorable. Perp and Pump would perform everywhere together, but after a while, Perp ended up going on that tour with Lil Peep called When the Lean Runs Out with Fat Nick and everybody. So the plan was to have Ominous perform alongside Lil Pump at several of these shows, but every time they were booked to do that, Ominous wouldn't get the dates right because Pump would tell him random stuff, wouldn't tell him it was going on, and then afterwards would be like, oh sorry, I didn't really know that you were supposed to be there. Ominous tried his best to not take it to heart. He just wanted to make sure that his buddy was okay. He knew he was starting to get into drugs, he was starting to smoke a lot of weed, get around weird people, and he wanted to make sure he stayed safe, didn't get robbed, didn't get taken advantage of. But Pump didn't care about that at all. He was 16 years old, he was into Xanax, he was smoking weed, he was making money, and he was girls, and that's really all he cared about. So by the time that Pump moved to Atlanta with Smoke Perp, he wasn't really talking to Ominous at all. They would try to get on FaceTime calls, and every time that they would, Pump would be messed up, and Ominous would get at Smoke Perp saying, why are you getting my little cousin fucked up? He's 16 years old, he shouldn't be doing Xanax, smoking weed, and these girls that are like 19 years old. But Pump was like, whatever, I don't really care, I'm having fun, I'm making money, get off my back, and they stopped talking, and soon after that he ended up going on the No Jumper tour. And of course this tour definitely wasn't good for him. It made him a lot of money and a lot of people showed up, but being around a bunch of adults that were all doing drugs with him definitely gave him a weird skewed sense of reality, and he started getting more and more hooked on the stuff every day.
I won't pop a Zan right now. I won't pop a Zan right now. I haven't even ate breakfast, nigga. I'll pop a Zan right now.
But as his lifestyle became more and more unhealthy and dangerous, he was getting more and more famous because he was blowing up on Instagram for all his antics. He ended up dropping a music video on Lyrical Lemonade for his song D-Rose, which blew up bigger than anything else on the channel at the time. It was straight up the biggest video on the channel for years until Betrayed came out in late 2018, and because of the name Little Xan and the video looking so crazy, it was dethroned, but it still sat at number 3 for years after that, and the video still sits at 200 million views. So everybody who says Gucci Gang was his first big hit is not true at all, because D-Rose was huge, and Elementary and Lil Pump themselves also had like 50 million views, so Lil Pump was huge at the time. He got bigger when Gucci Gang came out, but right now he's still huge. I said huge so many times in a row that it doesn't even sound like a real word anymore.
Huge. Not a bad one. Huge.
After this, Lil Pump would get an interview on the channel where he would talk about Lil Ominous for the very last time. There was another big viral video of him smoking a joint in Walmart or at Popeyes or something. He dropped another big video on the channel called Flex Like Ooh, and then he had another one called Talking Shit with Famous Dex, which wasn't as big as the other two, but was definitely still a very viewed video. He ended up performing at Rolling Loud. He signed a huge $8 million deal, and funnily enough, because he was so young, he wasn't actually legally allowed to sign that deal, so he got to keep the money, but then he re-signed for another $10 million, so he was making more money than most people make in their entire lives. And then at the very end of the year, he ended up dropping his debut album, or mixtape I guess it is, self-titled Lil Pump, that ended up peaking at number 3 on the Billboard Hot 100, and it sold 55k first week, which really isn't that bad. But the biggest moment was still to come, because one of the songs off of that album, known as Gucci Gang, hit at just the right time. It was a super ignorant song where he just repeated the same phrase over and over and over again.
Gucci gang, Gucci gang, Gucci gang, Gucci gang, Gucci gang, Gucci gang, Gucci gang.
And for some reason, the internet being the way that it was back then, people turned it into a meme, and I think there's a little bit of context you need to know to understand why Gucci Gang really was the hit that it was, and I'll tell you right now. In the early 2010s, hip-hop was really starting to change as a genre. There wasn't as many rapping songs on boom bap beats with the more hard-hitting bars. They were making a lot more pop-type stuff. Drake was coming out, Tyga, a lot of club music, a lot of more fruity instrumentals, and of course all the OGs from the 90s didn't really like to see the genre change like this, this because they felt like the music was more dumbed down, they weren't really spitting bars anymore, it wasn't feeling real like it used to in the 90s, and because of that, they kind of rejected the new type of music. And sometime in the mid-2010s, you started to get artists like Lil Yachty and Lil Uzi Vert that were banking more off their looks than their actual rapping abilities, and now we know that Lil Uzi Vert is actually a quite talented rapper. Lil Yachty is kind of debatable, but at the time they came out, people were like, what is going on? Hip-hop is dying, it's all about the looks and all about the persona, it's not about the music anymore. They really hated these two rappers quite a bit. But as time went on, both Yachty and Uzi were able to prove that they were actually talented rappers in their own right, despite the way they looked. But once Lil Pump came out, it was like a parody and the ultimate fear of all old heads. It was this guy just making absolutely ignorant rap. There was nothing to it, no substance, it was all look-based. He was blowing up with antics online, and he was like the full-on, fully realized version of what everybody didn't want to happen. And at this point, people didn't realize that it was a joke. All they saw was this artist rising to the top of the rap game off of completely brain-dead lyrics, and they decided to make it into a meme. They thought it was funny. Gucci gang, Gucci gang, Gucci gang. And because of those memes, it was able to blow up. It now sits at 1 billion views on YouTube, which is insane. It's hard to believe how novel this was at the time because, of course, with TikTok, every song is super repetitive and brain dead, but at the time, people hadn't heard this before, so it was super funny. But at the same time, Pump had become a meme, which is good and bad. Memes can definitely get you more popular, but once you get put into that box, it's hard to get out of it. And this really was the peak of Lil Pump's career. Within about a year and a half, he was able to rise to the very top of the rap game, become super popular, everybody knew who he was, and he even celebrated 10 million followers on Instagram with the Xan cake. Because on top of everything else, Lil Pump was also the poster boy for Xans during the Xandemic, which helped him out a lot, but soon, about 2 weeks later actually, Lil Peep would pass away off of Xanax, and all of a sudden, the entire rap game was rejecting that drug. And don't get me wrong, Smoke Perp and Lil Pump and a lot of other rappers tried to fight back against that, but they realized that the wave was over, people really weren't messing with it, and after what happened to Lil Peep, he kind of lost a whole part of his shtick. And to make matters worse, around the time that Gucci Gang was blowing up, another song appeared known as Gummo by an artist known as Tekashi 6ix9ine. And I don't think people really realize how 6ix9ine affected Lil Pump's career, because in every term, he was basically the evolved version of everything Lil Pump was. He was crazy, he was louder, he was more ignorant. I mean, look at it this way. Lil Pump had colorful hair, 6ix9ine had rainbow hair that went down to his shoulders and rainbow grills, making him look even more crazy. Pump had a couple face tats. 6ix9ine had so many face tats that they covered his entire face. Lil Pump was loud and obnoxious. He would always yell when he wasn't making music, but 6ix9ine was so obnoxious that he would actually yell on his own beats. In his songs, he was yelling. It was crazy. And of course, Lil Pump liked to fight with people. He liked to get into beef. He would start issues, but 6ix9ine had a gang backing him, and because of that, he would start so much beef with so many people that everybody started paying attention to him and stopped paying attention to Lil Pump. But it wasn't just Tekashi 6ix9ine. There was also other people that came into the Instagram space that took all of Pump's other attributes away from him. You had Boonk Gang, who was so crazy, he would steal stuff. Lil Pump would smoke in Walmarts. Boonk Gang would break into a Popeyes and steal all the chicken. So once again, he lost a little bit of his audience there. Lil Pump would do crazy stuff, do flips, and hurt himself in videos sometimes, but Supreme Patty was so crazy and would always hurt himself that people paid attention to him. Lil Pump was the youngest flexer, but Lil Tay was even younger, and she took away that from him. And then you had Lil Xan, who had such a crazy name that everybody paid attention to him when it came to the drug stuff, leaving Pump with what? Just some subpar music, really. And I'm not saying that Pump would have fallen off right there, because he still had memes around him. He had the whole Harvard dropout stuff. He had the stuff about wanting to bang iCarly. All of this was keeping him relevant, but his fans were very young, and they were starting to grow tired of the same old stuff. He played his album out for about 4 months in 2018, and then he finally dropped his next big video, Esquere, based off the catchphrase that he was always saying at the time. And I'm not gonna lie, this song is actually quite a banger. I mean, you can say what you want about Lil Pump's music, and I know now we're all acting like, oh, we never liked it, but I think we all had that one song that we kind of mess with, and this was the song for me, Esquere. I think it was pretty good, liked the music video, thought it was catchy. He said a little bit more in his verse, and because of that, it got 500 million views. And with the drop of this video, he was finally starting the rollout for his first official studio album, Harvard Dropout. That track was immediately followed up with another music video featuring Charlie Sheen for the track Drug Addicts, where once again they're playing into the whole thing about Lil Pump being a drug addict, which kind of was a dead meme at the time, but it seems like it worked because it still hit 200 million views, so apparently people are still paying attention. And I feel like around this time is when Lil Pump really started to lose his main relevancy. He was becoming a dead meme alongside Damn Daniel and Uganda Knuckles, where people weren't really thinking about him so much. His mainstay relevancy was burning out, and he now had to pull antics to get himself noticed. He was beefing with J. Cole, and that ended up getting him a little bit more attention, and then he rolled that into his biggest hit, or second biggest hit to Gucci Gang, I Love It with Kanye West. Now, of course, this music video got big plays. It almost has 500 million once again, but I don't really have any evidence to back this, and maybe it's just my perspective, but I really feel like at this point, none of my friends cared about Lil Pump anymore. Nobody was really talking about him. Of course, it was funny that the music video had them in Roblox costumes, but I really feel like this track was all spectacle. And I know that's weird to say because people are going to be like, hasn't his whole career been spectacle? Well, yes, but the thing about a good clout chaser is they'll get your attention online, but but then when you listen to the music, you end up actually liking the music. And in my opinion, this is really why 6ix9ine was so popular, because sure, he was crazy, he was doing antics, but because his music was actually pretty good at the time, sucks now, but at the time it was good, people would tune in and actually bump that shit. Because I'm not saying that D-Rose or Skede or High Art or anything, but they were actually played at different places. I would go to parties, I would go to my friend's house, and people would actually play that music. When it came to I Love It, they played it for like 1 week, we're all kind of like, huh, funny, kind of a cool song, and then after that we didn't pay that much attention anymore. It really felt like Pump was trying to recreate Gucci Gang once again, and of course having Kanye West there being funny and goofy, and then appearing at the Pornhub Awards dressed as water bottles got him a lot of attention, but it really felt like he was chasing trends. He was becoming a parody of himself, and I feel like if Pump had just tried to make a little bit more intelligent music, like still try to make it in the same style but give us a little bit deeper bars, people might have been like, whoa, Lil Pump is actually kind of spitting on this one. But of course this is Lil Pump we're talking about. He just kept doing the same thing, getting more and more into drugs, doing more antics online. He then dropped the song called Multi-Millionaires with Lil Uzi Vert, which I bet a lot of you didn't even know was real. There was no music video for this song, so nobody paid that much attention to it, and I feel like it actually dropped before I Love It, but on YouTube it dropped a little bit later. After that, XXXTentacion passed away, and there was an old open that was left behind that was originally supposed to be with another rapper, but it never went through, so Lil Pump's label bought it and put him on the song Arms Around You. And I'm not gonna lie, this is actually a pretty good track from Lil Pump. A lot of people in the comments were even saying that it seems like he was finally maturing, dropping some more serious bars, actually saying something in his music. Like I said, I feel like if he had went through with this, he could have been a more respected rapper, but unfortunately he went back to his old style. He then got on the XXL freshman list for 2018, which was kind of ridiculous all things considered. I mean, I'm not saying that Pump shouldn't have been on there, but XXL tried to make it seem like he was the star of that year's class when he was past his prime by about 6 months. They definitely should have put 6ix9ine, Lil Xan, some of these more crazy people that actually blew up in 2018 as opposed to Pump. I mean, it's not really Pump's fault. He didn't choose to be the star of that class, and to be fair, that was probably the last year that anyone really cared what XXL did whatsoever. After that, they ended up doing trash classes in 2019, 2020, and by 2023, nobody even cares anymore. I'm sure this year is going to have a terrible class. It's all just something that we point and laugh at this point, but that's a video for another day. After that, Pump ended up dropping a snippet for his new song, Butterfly Doors, which had an ad-lib in it that went ching chong, and because of that, a lot of people were mad at him online. I mean, it definitely was pretty short-sighted. He even pulled his eyes back, so that's definitely material to get canceled at this point, and he even got dissed by the Chinese government when one of their funded rap groups dropped a diss track on him, which is kind of funny, and yeah, that's real, that actually happened. And at this point you're probably thinking, what's taking Pump so long to drop that album? I mean, he blew up with Gucci Gang in late 2017, that was his peak of his career, and now it's almost early 2019 and we still haven't got the album. What's going on? And I cannot describe how big of a detrimental effect those 14 months had on Pump. I mean, he said that he lost the album when he went in a hot tub with some girls and he had the hard drive in his pocket, it got fried. I think he was maybe just on drugs and he didn't really want to drop music. In just the time it took Pump to drop this album, 6ix9ine had blown up and had his entire career. Yes, his entire career happened within the span of Lil Pump not dropping an album, all the way from Gummo to getting Rico'd at the end of the year. X had passed away, there was new people on the rise like Juice WRLD, Internet Money, Ian Dior. New sounds were being made, and the Florida wave, let alone the SoundCloud wave, was basically coming to an end. So when he dropped in early 2019, it was like, why? Why is he waiting so long to drop? I mean, just to set the tone for this album, it was named after a dead meme, so by the time that it came out, people just didn't care anymore. And that's basically Pump's whole career, a dead meme that people don't care about anymore. He tried to do a No Jumper interview to get hype around the album, and don't get me wrong, it still sold okay, but at that point, after 2 years, he's not Kendrick, he's not J. Cole, nobody's waiting 2 years for a Lil Pump album, and by the time it came out, his fans were grown up. Nobody found this funny or cute or entertaining anymore. He did a couple music videos with Lil Wayne, and it was the same old thing. He tried to start up this thing called Harvard University or something like that. Harvard Dropout did these videos where he was talking about sipping lean. All this came off as really forced and fake. It felt like there was a bunch of boomers sitting around in a meeting saying, how should we market Lil Pump? Even though he wasn't an industry plan, it kind of came across like that. They were definitely trying to market towards kids, which is already kind of weird because Lil Pump's always talking about doing Xans and sipping lean. I don't think you want kids to be wanting to do that. There was a couple more music videos after that. He did a Spanish song that did okay. He did a couple things with Sheck West, but for the most part, the Lil Pump effect was definitely over. And the label must have felt the same way because not long after that, they ended up dropping him and he was left to his own devices to figure out how he was going to take the rest of his career. And he did what he always did. He dropped a brain dead song called Mona Lisa. Some people kind of paid attention to that. They thought it was funny. He tried to clout chase fighting with Eminem. He dropped a pretty disrespectful snippet talking about overdosing like Juice WRLD.
Like Juice
We're 70 pounds on the private jet.
And when none of that worked to get him any attention, he decided to start supporting Trump. Now, I don't really care about politics, I don't really care who you support, but you gotta admit that Lil Pump doesn't really have any political leaning whatsoever. The only reason that he did this was to be controversial, to get people to talk about him again, and then to drop a song at the same time, but I feel like there was such a better way he could have done this. He ended up speaking at a Trump rally, and when he was announced, Trump would call him Lil Pimp, so that started kind of a meme, and then after that, he dropped a track called Lil Pimp, which is pretty funny and definitely could have worked, but he only dropped it on SoundCloud, so it didn't do that well. He definitely should have shot a video with Trump, like got Trump in the video and then try to really play into it. That definitely could have got him some views, but since he just kind of lazily dropped it on SoundCloud, never really went too far, and within a few months, people didn't care anymore. And for the next 4 years, there's really nothing else to mention about Lil Pump. I mean, he got sober, he got more healthy, he's changing his life, which is great, but for the most part, Lil Pump only exists as a headline that you hear once in a while. It's pretty much the same effect as an old sitcom star that you like to pay attention to. Once in a while, there's a news article and you're like, oh, that's kind of interesting. I remember that guy from that show back then, and then it immediately leaves your mind and you're like, whatever, you don't pay attention to it anymore. I mean, it's so bad to the point that Lil Pump is actually trying to support Trump again in 2024 just to get more clout. He even tattooed Trump's face on his leg, and it's like, dude, it's just kind of sad at this point. I mean, Pump isn't 19 anymore, he's 23 years old, and everybody remembers him for playing that character when he was 17 to 19, and now he's older, he's grown, he wants to move on, but how can you move on when everything you're ever famous for and known for is something you did when you were a teenager? If he tries to recreate the old stuff, people call him corny. If he tries to do something new, they say, oh, we want the old Pump back. I mean, think about the stuff that you did when you were a teenager. Do you really want that to be the one thing you're known for? I mean, don't get me wrong, he has hit songs, he has a lot of money, more money than most of us will ever get in our life. I mean, only being known for the stuff you did when you were a teenager, the drugs you did, the antics, is that really a legacy that anyone will want? Being endlessly talked about by YouTubers talking about your fall off and everything you used to do when you were dumb, young, and immature? I mean, there's an argument to be made there because some of us will die and will never leave a legacy whatsoever, but honestly, is it better or worse to be remembered forever as a clown or be not remembered at all? I mean, it's up for you guys to decide. I don't really know. I mean, getting fame, getting money, is it worth it? And I just wonder, when Lil Pump wakes up in his giant mansion surrounded by all his money, the plaques that he got back in the day, and remembers his old days, is he happy, or is he like, damn, I peaked in my life at 17 and now I can never reach that again? It's gotta feel kind of crappy that you're never going to be able to get to the point that you were when you were 17, that everything you've ever done in your life and everything you will ever do in the rest of your life will never hit that peak again. There's just no way about it. I mean, maybe he's made peace with it, maybe he's moving away from the Lil Pump persona, but I mean, he's always going to have money, so he's never going to have to worry about working a real job. So should we feel bad for him? I don't know, but it could be worse. He could be 6ix9ine, or he could be Jumix. I mean, those are definitely two worse people to be. I wouldn't want to be either of them. And all that's to say, when you're trying to make it as an artist, when you're trying to get out there, do music full time, make money, and be a big rapper, try to think about what you're putting out there. I mean, there's nothing wrong with a little bit of antics, a little bit of fun, and if you just want to make a bunch of money and you don't really care what people think about you, definitely go for that. But just think about what might happen, that you might be put in this box for the rest of your life and only be remembered for things you did when you were dumb, young, and immature. I mean, me, myself, I don't want to be remembered for stuff I did when I was 17, because when I was 17, I was a dumbass. I think most of us are. If you're 17 right now, you're probably a dumbass, sorry to say. But that's the beauty of life. You grow up, you learn, you become a better person. So only being remembered by your biggest mistakes definitely can't be the best. But I'm going to stop rambling now. Take what you want for this, think about it for yourself. And hey, I mean, Lil Pump is never ever going to fall off, because there's always going to be brain dead videos like this one talking about his life to the end of time. So that's the legacy of Pump. But is that the one he wants? Who knows? But if you want to help me build my legacy, subscribe to the channel. That was corny as fuck, I'm sorry. But subscribe, shout out Knife Gang. Got a Patreon if you want to throw me a buck. That would really help out the channel. Only $1. I know it looks like 2 here, but I'm Canadian. So if you give me $1, it's actually $2. Pretty cool stuff. I got that second channel, Twisted Society. I post interviews there as well as music. So if you want to get your music on the channel, email me there. I got it pinned to my Instagram. And besides that, thank you guys so much for watching. We're on the road to 14K. I appreciate you all, and we'll talk to you next time. Bye.